She holds a position that commands global attention. A dream come true for Sanda Ojiambo, who has always set her goals high. Sanda was working with Safaricom as head of sustainable business and social impact when the opportunity to join the United Nations Global Compact as the executive director came knocking.
The UN Global Compact is a special initiative that was set up in the year 2000 by the then Secretary General Kofi Annan. And the purpose of the compact, when he founded it, he said, is he wanted to bring a human face to the global market. Essentially, what the UN Global Compact does is align businesses to work with 10 principles. We call them the 10 principles of the Global Compact, which are around human rights, labor, the environment, and anti-corruption. So it's about responsible business, it's about corporate sustainability, and over time it's become about how businesses can help deliver on the Sustainable Development Goals. So essentially, to date, 20 years on, it's a movement of more than 11,000 companies and 3,000 non-business participants, all working to drive corporate sustainability, responsible business, and to deliver on the Sustainable Development Goals.
Some of the Kenyan member companies are Kenya Airways, Safaricom, Kenya Commercial Bank, Equity Bank, and Kenyan.
In Kenya, we're represented by the entity, what we call our local network. It's the Global Compact Network Kenya. And the Global Compact Network Kenya is housed and partners with CAM, the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. There's a broad number of SMEs as well. I don't want to create the impression that the Global Compact is only large companies. There's a significant number of SMEs as well that are partners of the Global Compact in Kenya and also globally.
And you may be wondering, just how does one land such a powerful job?
Well, I actually applied for the job. The job was advertised. It was quite a lengthy interview process. I went through a number of stages, both with recruitment firm, with the UN Global Compact Advisory Board, and ultimately with the UN, culminating in an interview with the Deputy Secretary General of the UN, Amina Mohammed. She was in New York at the time. We did it virtually, but it was a long and very extensive interview process that got me here.
Sanda got the appointment right in the middle of the COVID-19 crisis, and she spent the first part of her job working virtually from her home country, Kenya.
It's been quite a journey. I reflect on the last 5 months and so much has happened. I mean, COVID has brought so much, first of all, time for reflection, but also so much change. I couldn't join physically New York at the time because, to be honest, the borders were closed anyway, even if I'd wanted to come over. But towards the end of August, when the Kenyan airspace was opened, and I started thinking about relocation. But settling in has been pleasant. The team has been most supportive, even though we're all working virtually at this point in time.
Sanda went to Hospital Hill and Nairobi primary schools and did her O-levels in the UK.
I did my undergraduate at McGill University in Montreal. There I studied economics and international development. I then did my graduate school at the University of Minnesota, where I studied public policy and development economics.
She is full of praise for Safaricom as the place that greatly prepared her for her current position.
I was at Safaricom for close to 12 years. It's really the place where I began my work on sustainable business and the SDGs under the leadership of our former CEO, the late Bob Collymore, who was a fantastic mentor and guide in this area. So at Safaricom, I headed the two foundations, Safaricom Foundation and M-Pesa Foundation. We built the M-Pesa Foundation Academy, which I think still remains one of the best schools on the continent for bright, talented, but underprivileged kids. We pioneered the integration of the Sustainable Development Goals into corporate strategy. We also launched a wide range of, we call them technology for development products and services, how use mobile for agriculture, for health, and for education. So I held a very broad portfolio, but I'd sum it up by saying all of it really led towards how you can demonstrate that a company can do business, but also do good at the same time. And we called it the principle of having purpose, but also delivering on profit.
Sanda has dared to work in many hardship areas too.
Yeah, I started the early days of my career in Somalia. I worked with Care International in Somalia. I then worked with UNDP for a short time in Somalia. Thereafter, I worked in a health NGO that covered the entire African continent. So I had the privilege to serve, close to, sub-Saharan Africa, more than 40 countries in sub-Saharan Africa. And that marked the first 11 years of my career. Thereafter, I joined Safaricom for the latter 11 years.
Sanda Ojiambo is from a family of achievers. Her father, the late Dr. Hilary Ojiambo, was Kenya's first cardiologist and co-founder of Kenya Cardiac Society in 1980. Her mother, Professor Julia Ojiambo, a nutritionist, was Kenya's second female elected member of parliament in 1974. She was the first female assistant minister in Kenya during Jomo Kenyatta's administration, and she is currently the University of Nairobi Council chair. Sanda says her parents' influence in her life is huge.
Definitely. I don't think there's anybody who is not influenced by their parents. In first of all, the most basic and maternal way, how you are brought up and the values that you hold near and dear. And I cherish both my parents actually for instilling in us a couple of values and disciplines. Hard work, service to community, and also just, trying to read wide and be as broad-minded as possible. I credit my parents for that. Career-wise, they've been great, supporting what you'd like to do in a career. So I'm a social scientist by training, having studied economics and public policy, but they've always been very supportive of my work, whether it was in the NGO sector or in the corporate sector, and certainly now here at the UN.
But has life been all smooth for her?
Life hasn't always been easy, and I think it's very important to give that balanced story. Also, being on the road, it takes a toll. Working in the NGO sector, I would be away from home for many days at a time, many weeks at a time. It's not easy. So I think always finding that balance, being able to connect back with family and friends is important.
As the current executive director of the United Nations Global Compact, Sanda says her vision is to see companies take faster strides in the integration of sustainable development goals in their business strategies, with COVID-19 presenting even bigger challenges. I asked her view on how companies like Kenya Airways can align themselves to the changing times.
For Kenya Airways, when they joined, I think also being a leader in the aviation industry. But as we talk about recovering from COVID and building forward better, I think the challenges for the aviation industry are very many. How do they become more efficient and more effective in an era when air travel is on the decline? How do they look at things such as their fuel emissions, their carbon footprint, and look at what their contribution is around the environment? So that it's an opportunity for the industry, as well as many other businesses, to relook at what their future business models may look like at this point in time. We've all gotten so used to working virtually, but at the same time, the airline industry must almost reinvent itself.
Indeed, COVID-19 has changed things, and the aviation sector and traveling at large will no longer be the same. When it comes to living and working abroad, Sanda warns that abroad is not necessarily a bed of roses.
If you're going to go abroad to work, make sure it's work that will fulfill your passions and your joys, and you'll be satisfied with that job, because I think that's most important. So you need to be confident that what you're doing is going to add value to you. That's that. Look at the opportunities. What else do you do aside from work? So be somewhere where there's also a good social support system, where there's social things that you can do, cultural things you can do, and immerse yourself fully in what you do abroad. I would say don't only seek to come abroad for a job. Come abroad for a life and see what else you can gain.
In conclusion, this is Sanda's advice to the youth.
My advice to the younger generation as a whole, I think, first of all, the future of work or the world of work is going to be significantly different. Education is key. I think at this point in time, technology is going to be a key driver of what the future looks like. So access to technology is important. I think for anybody, what is very important is building up the right skills for work and the right attitude. To young girls in particular, I'd say seek mentorship, seek guidance and always seek to make the right decisions that are good for you as a young person and are in line with what your future aspirations are.